and welcome to this week's edition of the SFL Podcast, presented by APM Music here on YouTube. Unlike last week where I said it was going to be on SoundCloud, I guess I must have just not heard the directions there. I am the host of the SFL Podcast, as always, Jack Brown, joined alongside me by Ramos Lynn, owner of the Mexico City Aztecs, and SFL Commissioner Cameron Irvine. Ryan Michaels could not be in this week due to some family issues. But before we dive into these games this week, there was some pretty crazy stuff that happened over the Discord this past SFL week. We had people leaving. We had to have, I think, 1,500 messages deleted or something crazy like that. Cam, do you remember anything about the particulars of that?
No, not really. I think I was asleep. got too many things on the mind around here lately, but community's as strong as ever. I don't know. I guess some political discussions seep through, and we just don't do that around here.
Yeah, there are political discords out there, people. You can go join those if you want to talk about politics. Yeah, and people leaving. I remember Duke Wilson was one of them who confirmed that he was leaving, and then I think one of Carolina's guys left. But we wish them the best of luck in life. Just sad that you had to leave us here at the SFL. But oh boy, week 4, we got some football games to play this week. Starting out our little discussion roundtable thing here, we got a cross-conference clash between the Denver Nightwings and the Oklahoma City Renegades. The Renegades had their first loss of the season last week when they ran into a wall that was called the New Orleans Pharaohs. Meanwhile, the Denver Nightwings handed the San Francisco Sharks their first win of the season, in a season that I didn't win any game, but I'm going to just move along from there. Ramos, you are in the conference, one of these two teams, and you've played them once already. How are you looking at this game between the Nightwings and the Renegades?
Well, I don't actually know what to expect. I mean, I thought that Denver last week was going to have, like, a tight battle. What happened in the Pride Desperados game, I thought it was going to happen in the Denver-San Francisco game. Denver was allowing just, 10 points a game, and now all of a sudden they allow almost 40 against a team in San Francisco who I didn't think was going to score that many going on the road. So honestly, I'm not sure what to expect. It was good to see Denver being able to score a lot of points. They scored 34 points. Unfortunately for them, it was not enough. And as far as Oklahoma City, week after week, their offense is very potent. They scored 30 points again. They lost, but they scored 40 points again, and they allowed 34. So now the logical thing is saying, hey, this is going to be a tight game, but it's going to be high scoring. Probably it's going to be, again, like 34-31 or, 41-38, something like that, because these two teams both scored more than 30 points and allowed more than 30 points this past week. But you never know in the SFL. Sometimes when this happens, it's the complete opposite thing, and the defense just ball out. So it's a very intriguing matchup. I think Oklahoma City looks, for me, at least to me, as the most solid team out of the two. So if I have to guess, I will say high scoring, and I say Oklahoma City takes it.
Okay, Emil, I'm not going to deny right there. However, the game itself will do the talking there. Well, Cam, you probably have done the Sims by this point, and you know the answers to all these questions that we're probably going to be posing throughout this whole.
Well, no, actually, there haven't been any Sims to taken place. I don't even have playbooks yet. We still got, as of this recording, 2 hours before the deadline, so it's all good.
If this was live, I would say get your playbooks and coaches, but this isn't going up till tomorrow. So, speaking of kind of like that sort of craziness, next up in terms of the game discussion, we got Indianapolis heading over to take on the Queen City Corsairs. I think this is the first time these teams have ever played each other, and it's one of the original SFL owners in Eric Barkley and Queen City taking on, the young probably I would say the youngest and freshest team of the SFL bunch in the Indy Red Devils. Kim, you've known Eric and James for a long time. Now seeing these two go up against each other, how do you feel this is going to play out on the football field?
I don't know. Both teams last week appeared to be, they both played on the road, and both appeared to just be flat. And Indy scoring 13 in St. Louis, they just didn't look explosive as they've looked in the past last season, and then over the first couple of weeks. And then Queen City just kind of, had a lot of opportunities and just kind of played around with Baltimore for too long before it got away from them. So I think that with Queen City being back at home, with Queen City looking overall the stronger team over the first 3 weeks, I would anticipate Queen City having maybe an easier time than Indy might. But you never can discount a team that it's a wake-up call, right? And I think Ramos could probably attest to this. When you have a game that doesn't meet your expectations, sometimes it makes you think twice as hard about the game plan that previous week. And I think that Queen City probably looks at this, T-Pat, TJ had a good game plan. They, we've gone back and forth as a rival. It was a great game, no problem, stay the course. Whereas I think Indy this past week is going to be thinking, all right, we can't let that happen again. We're 1-2. Our backs are against the wall. I'm not going to sit here and necessarily make a prediction. I would say that Queen City is probably in the driver's seat from a prediction standpoint, but I wouldn't discount Indy just because I don't think they're very happy with their performance, and I think they're going to try to make a statement.
So they're kind of like a team lusting for blood almost.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, they're trying to drag somebody to hell,
Simply put, yeah. But we're going to talk about a team that I think is really lusting for blood in Sioux Falls a bit later on. But, Kim, you mentioned that, the Red Devils have their backs against the wall. You want to talk about two teams with their backs against the wall. You got to look no further than the Chicago Wildcats and the London Knights. The Chicago Wildcats starting off 0-2, losing last week 16-6 to a Vancouver Legion team, which, a lot of people would probably say is not the strongest, while the London Knights lose at home against Carolina, which I'm pretty sure has shocked a lot of people that Carolina's just getting going so far this well. So, I'm going to swing the mic over here to Ramos. These two teams have their backs against the wall, probably in the same position that we were at the start of season 10, of course, it was last season. How do you feel as if these two teams have schemed and are going to come in and approach this?
It's again, Chicago. They it seems that they cannot score. I mean, it seems that they cannot score just at all. 6 points last week. London faced a very tough Carolina team and lost by 1 score as well. But if I have to say, if I had to do a prediction, I like London a little bit. I think Chicago will be a good team this season, but like on the later part, and I'm not sure if that's going to be enough for the playoffs. So I think that Chicago could be a dark horse team and could be a team that could ruin some SFL teams' chances to make the playoffs. But I think that Chicago right now is in work in progress team. I think they are I'm not going to use the word rebuilding because I'm not sure if this is something that you can coin here in the SFL. But I think that Chicago is probably one season away from potentially another championship run. Therefore, I will go with London in this game. I just think that they have a little bit more pieces and they have looked a little bit stronger than Chicago so far. So, I will go with the Knights. Honestly, this two teams, I'm not sure what to expect right now, week 4. Again, I think that to the latter part of the season, they could be a team to be reckoned with. But right now, I don't think that any of these two teams are right there. They are not right there. Like I see the Queen City Corsairs, like I see the Pride, like I see the Skyhawks, like I see the Storm, obviously, like I see the Renegades. So I will go with London, probably something like 20-16.
What did you do to Chicago
Yeah.
in the championship game? Man, just I mean, they have not
Ray
bounced back,
Bentley,
Ramos. You scarred them, man.
It's not. No, I love Shan. I love the Chicago Wildcats. I love Maurice. I love all of them. But I'm just being honest. It would not surprise me if they go on a run because Shan has demonstrated like he can take a team from almost dead to a playoff team. But yeah, I just don't see it right now, to be honest with you.
Well, no, Cam, you see what happened was the fact that when Ray Bentley was trucking over everyone, and I mean probably everyone, he got like 140 yards in the championship. I'm pretty sure that Chicago as a collective has still yet to recover from all those concussions suffered during that game. Even the people who just came on this season or last season, they by osmosis absorbed just the scarring from the season 9 championship game.
Suppose
we're
it's
going to talk
possible.
about championship. What?
I suppose it's possible.
Hey, you know what? I've seen crazier things happen in this real world, so who knows what could happen in APF. But talking about teams that were scarred in the championship game, next up we got the New Orleans Pharaohs taking on the Tallahassee Pride. New Orleans got their first win in franchise history last week over the Oklahoma City Renegades, 34-30. Great job to them. First win of many, we hope, right? And Tallahassee, once again, starting off 3-0, beating a Tulsa team that just has not looked like themselves so far this season. And even Tallahassee, although they are 3-0, they are not the Tallahassee, at least from an offensive perspective, that they were the season prior. Wouldn't you agree with me right there, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to see this Pride team compared to last Pride team. They're last in the league in passing, and they're 3-0. When was the last time a team last in the league in passing was 3-0? I mean, that's unbelievable. It's like it doesn't matter what their deficiency is. Nobody can beat them. It's really stunning. But somebody's going to put it together. And New Orleans, they're innocent. They got nothing to lose. Nobody. I'm sure when we put up who you got, I can't imagine many people are going to pick New Orleans, but why not? I mean, who knows? Maybe the number one pick in the rookie draft, maybe a rookie owner in the league, a rookie coach. I mean, you just never know. All signs point to Tallahassee. They should take care of business. But Tallahassee's lost to the Cleveland Stallions. I remember a couple seasons ago. It wasn't their most recent regular season loss, but they went to Cleveland, and I mean, honestly, they played like crap. And Cleveland, they did everything they wanted to them, and Cleveland was not a playoff team that year. So, I mean, Tallahassee's not infallible here, but it's their game to lose. So it'll be interesting to see if they can continue to take care of business. And Jaye Yola is, he now leads the league in rushing. He's having a season, and it's good to see a guy like Yola who took his lumps in the early part of last season, not getting the yards, not getting the carries, not getting the glory, and now he is, and that's awesome to see a career kind of blossom like that.
Yeah, well, if memory serves correctly, in season 8, Ray Bentley was like last in the league in rushing before he decided that he was just going to truck over everyone and not care about anything else. Is that true? Because I think I remember him saying that once or twice.
I remember Ray Bentley
that's
sucking,
true.
but
in season 8, Ray Bentley was last in the league in rushing. I think he had like 700 yards, and then the season after, in season 9, he got over 2,000 and was the league MVP. Correct?
Yeah. Oof.
And then Bentley realized what he can put in brownies, and the rest was history.
Oh.
Right. Oh God, I'm trying to remember the quote from, I think it was the Denver game about drugs or something. I don't know. Don't do drugs. That's the moral of that story. But Cam, you mentioned earlier that I think I mentioned kind of threw it up in the air that Indy is a team that's kind of looking for blood right now. If you want to talk about teams looking for blood, look no further than the Sioux Falls Sparrows, who travel up to the Vancouver Legion. Sioux Falls, as everyone most likely knows, if you don't, they lost 37-3 to the Alaska Storm. That is just not what you want to see as a team that was predicted to probably play in a very close game, and really they were just shut out. That field goal was, I think, towards the end of the game, and just there for respect's sake. Ramos, these are two Western Conference teams. You kind of agree with my sentiment right there that Sioux Falls is just a team looking for blood, and maybe Vancouver is just wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, I think, and this is what makes great teams great, just like Sioux Falls, is that sometimes you do just need a wake up call, and they just go from there. And I think that's exactly what Sioux Falls will do, because they're just still a very good football team that were just in the wrong place, wrong time, against the wrong team, and they just had a bad day. I mean, it was just flat out a bad day that they had. But again, this is what happens with the great teams, that even though they are facing adversity and they got blown out, they just come back like it's nothing. So I'm fully expecting for Sioux Falls to bounce back. I like what I'm seeing from Vancouver as far as the defensive standpoint. I mean, last season they were really struggling on defense, especially on the passing defense. They were dead last for the majority of the season. They were allowing like 450 yards a game passing. And now I see a defense in Vancouver who is stronger, who is wiser, if I can use that word. So, I'm expecting another grinder. I think it's going to be close, but I think Sioux Falls will bounce back probably 24-20 approximately, and be back on track.
Back on track to hopefully make the playoffs again, and then hopefully beat Alaska in those playoffs. When that just blended for Sioux Falls, a feel-good story of the century, or of the SFL decade. I don't know. Moving on now, we have the Atlanta Swarm taking on the Dallas Lobos. The Lobos got their first win of the season last week in a really close matchup where they had to face off against the Las Vegas Fury in one of their cross-conference matchups, beating them 44-37. I swear that looks like an arena football score. But now they're looking to defend their home ground against the Alaska Swarm. I think, just to go off copy real quick with that, Ron Cochran, when I did his interview for the SFL convention, he said that the Alaska Storm was the Atlanta Swarm. So I guess it was inevitable that I was going to flip those two around. Anyway, Cam, all that off-topic stuff out of the way, Dallas is kind of your hometown SFL team. How do you feel if they're going to do this playing against the Atlanta Swarm?
Man, I for both of these teams, we talked earlier about London and Chicago kind of being in a position where they really needed to get a victory. I think that these two teams actually need a victory more. Houston is 2-1 without Warren Murray, basically, for 2 whole games. You can burn the week 1 tape. You got Tallahassee, who's unbeaten. Oklahoma City looks to be, a continual force in the South. You expect Tulsa to come back up, especially. I mean, Dallas and Atlanta. I don't think either of these teams can afford to fall to 1-3 in the South. And really, it just comes down to which offense is going to lose their mind in a negative way. I think that Atlanta has thrown some critical interceptions in the fourth quarter, and I think that Dallas has thrown too many critical interceptions, like all the time, and it's their passing offense is so lethal, but yet at the same time they make mistakes. They don't really have a running game. They need to get Royce Robbins more involved, and the question becomes, is this the week to do it, or do they trust Synergy enough against the secondary? Mahmoud Ajlani just had 3 interceptions against Houston, and Kentez Johnson, who had some success, but still struggle with the turnovers and everything. So I just don't know what's going to happen to the loser of this game because they're going to be in a difficult position. I think Atlanta probably needs it just a little bit more because they're on a 2-game slide, and both of those games were at home. I think Atlanta needs some confidence back and needs a confidence builder. Nothing would build that confidence more than going on the road and shutting down the pass-happy Lobos. I think Dallas was in both of their, really, really close loss games. They didn't necessarily throw those games away. They just lost out to better teams that week. So I think that this game is just going to come down to who throws the game away in the fourth quarter. And whoever doesn't, I think, is going to win.
With Atlanta's propensity from at least a couple weeks ago to throw away a game in the fourth quarter to Tallahassee, maybe it wouldn't be that surprising to see Dallas come out on top. Excuse me. Although, once again, Dallas pretty pass-happy, and, with passes come interceptions. We're going to shimmy on over throughout the South to complete the non-primetime lineup, or I guess now we have our first primetime game. We have the Tulsa Desperados, who have just not really been themselves these first couple weeks this season, heading over to the Houston Hyenas, play them down south. So, Ramos, at least Houston you're rather familiar with, but Tulsa, I don't think you've ever played them, or we have ever played them. How are you feeling about this game, especially looking at Houston or Tulsa's position?
Obviously Tulsa will be playing desperate, no pun intended, because they just need a win. I mean 0-3, and this is something that doesn't surprise me that much if you look at the standpoint of we've seen this happen. We've seen it happen with us, and when we were the SFL Gorillas. We were in season 5, got to the championship game, and our sophomore season we just played terribly bad, and we would just went like 3-9, and we were just really, really bad. So it's normal for a sophomore team that after having a great season, they started 8-0 last season. Now they're 0-3, and I think this is just Houston's game to lose. They are at home, and I've really liked what I've seen from Kentez Johnson. I've seen a lot of poise. I've seen a lot of touch on the ball. Great spiral, and I think he's probably the best rookie quarterback right now. But for Tulsa it's kind of desperate time, really. I mean, they need a win. I mean, you would drop to 0-4, and it's not impossible to come back from that, but it's definitely really, really difficult, especially in this division where you have to go against Houston, where you have to go against the Renegades, when you have to go against these teams. It's really, really tough to come back from an 0-4 in this division. So I think Tulsa will play with a lot of heart. I think that Tulsa will just put everything on the table. But with that, I think some interceptions will come. With that, some mistakes will happen. And I think Houston at home will take it.
So dropping down to 0-4, and Cam, you said that dropping to 1-3 would be pretty difficult in this division, as Ramos just said. 0-4, I think the only time that a team's gone 0-4 they come back to make the playoffs was probably the season 9 Vancouver Legion. And, that came out of just, a insane bounce back from, probably inspired by that win over the San Antonio Vaqueros, who are now the Denver Night Wings. But, on the topic of classic SFL matchups, got our first primetime game here. Friday Night Lights football. We have the Baltimore Vultures, or as Cam will probably call them forever and ever.
Oh, you did it. You are just wrong for that.
Yeah. And there goes my job from the podcast. We'll now be
You're lucky I'm not recording this live or streaming this live right now, Jack.
I thought you said, you're lucky I'm not recording this, Jack. I was like, oh, no, I've just been doing this all for nothing. Speaking of Ramos, they're taking on the Aztecs, who were formerly the San Jose Gorillas. So essentially, this is just the Crabs versus the Gorillas. Let's put it like that, Cam. Hey, how do you feel the game's going to go?
Man, and I got to call the game, too. I got to call somebody, make a schedule change. I expect a classic. I still remember, I'm sure Ramos does too, I still remember the game between the Gorillas and the Crabs where Greg Corky was calling the game with me. And
Great game.
yeah, it was one of the best in league history. I don't think it made the top 10, but it was probably in the top 20. And I just remember it was Ulysses Mora, right?
Yes, it was.
Oh man, had a great catch, and Corky had such a great call that game. I miss that guy. And oh man, just so many, just the CAG connection, and you had started your playing days on TJ's squad, and it has been a long time. How long has it been since you guys played each other?
Oh, it's been a minute. We'll say probably since season. Jeez.
Season Jesus, not a season, Ramos.
Maybe that was the last. I'm not sure if that was the last time, but that was probably the second to last. I will have to check on that. But it's been quite some time, and the games that we had was all close games, tight contested matches, and it was just great fun.
T-Pat and Ramos own 3 of the 10 league championships, so I mean this is just going to be an awesome game. I have no idea who's going to win. It's hard to believe that Mexico City would lose at home and fall to 1-2, but Baltimore looked together. They did not look lethal necessarily against Queen City, but they looked better put together. So it's going to be interesting to see what they did. And of course, you know, the Aztecs coming into the game on a bye got 2 opportunities to watch the Vultures and kind of game plan around that. So I'm curious, Ramos, did you see the jump in Baltimore from game 1, which was week 2, to game 2, which was week 3, since T-Pat came back?
Yes, definitely. You can see the inflection of it. You can see the expertise. And, you know, also, you know, there's some teams that match well against some teams. And Baltimore, like, historically has always matched up well against Queen City / New York. You know, you remember those days where they played every season like twice a year. And always contested matches like 38-34. You know, those types of games. So I knew it was going to be close. I knew it was going to be a great game. And I definitely saw just a leap, you know, from losing 30-7, and then they lost against the Skyhawks 24-13 to now against one of the best teams in the league in Queen City. So yeah, definitely I saw that, you know, expertise by T-Pat. Definitely.
You know, TJ's definitely good to have him back in the league, running a strong franchise there in Baltimore. That game's going to be a lot of fun tonight. It
will.
Yeah, I was going to say, so tonight is like, oh yeah, this goes up tomorrow. I keep on forgetting this is pre-recorded by the fact that you at home are listening to a recording. Ain't weird how that works?
Beep, boop, beep.
Anyways, then I guess tomorrow night then, we have the Alaska Storm heading down to Las Vegas, Nevada, one of the hottest places in the United States, to take on the Las Vegas Fury, who after their ridiculous first game against San Francisco has kind of seemed to just somewhat sputter out apart from their lethal kick return unit. Meanwhile, Alaska has just kind of been dominating everybody. Nothing has seemed to stand in their way so far. Now, you know, you guys, how are you feeling about this game in particular? Will the Fury have that first game spark, or will Alaska just kind of steamroll over them again?
Well, I think that the Fury just have to try to run the football, because if they try to pass the ball, I think Alex Dominguez will just feast on them, to be honest with you. So if I'm Vegas, I'm running the ball early and often, and you just cannot let Alaska get into a 2-score lead early, because then you have to pass the ball, and then Alex Dominguez will kill you, as he does so many times. So I think that Vegas needs to run the ball right at him, up the gut. Do not fear the big man. I think you have to run right into Big Sexy if you're Vegas, this game at least, because they are built, in my opinion, for that. So regardless, this is a game where a cold weather team, Alaska, goes into Vegas, and that could be problems. However, I like Alaska's just wisdom, if I can say that, Max Paul's expertise in the game, and just how he has a lot of seasons under his belt going against a team that is still an expansion team in their first season. I still like Alaska in this game. But if we see the Vegas that showed up against Dallas and puts up 37 points, I mean, they allowed 44, but they still scored 37 points. Or the Vegas that showed up in week 1 and were just running all over people. I like Vegas keeping it close, but in the long run, I see Alaska taking this one.
Alrighty, I wouldn't be too surprised if that happened either. But as we said last week, we thought that I think everyone on the podcast thought it was going to be close between Sioux Falls and Alaska. Yeah, we were very accurate about that, weren't we? Congratulations to the podcast, keeping up our very strong predictions throughout all of SFL history.
Glad I wasn't on last week.
We didn't predict Tallahassee. What?
Glad I wasn't on last week.
Yeah. No, or also the fact that, remember, people, in Season 10, we didn't predict Tallahassee to go to the playoffs. We were very accurate on that one, weren't we? But for the final game of the week, it's the primetime showdown hoedown at David A. Richardson Memorial Stadium. Yes, that's what words are, people.
Priceless.
Where we have the St. Louis Gladiators hitting the road to take on the Carolina Skyhawks, who, I'm going to say this, are actually looking legitimately playoff contenders, maybe even top 2 in the East so far. So Cam and Ramos, would you agree with me on kind of that sort of potential, and really just what sort of game are we going to see out of this matchup?
I don't think the league can lose. Either Carolina's Cinderella story continues and they go 4-0, or St. Louis just kind of enters into the arena of championship contenders by getting to 3-1. Look, I think if St. Louis's secondary and defensive front continues playing like it's playing, and Dylan Asil plays smart football, I think St. Louis has a great chance. Carolina strikes me as a team that is doing everything right now above average. I can't pin, Francis looks lethal, but Ulandula's playing real solid football. The Carolina linebackers are playing well. Defensive line is getting some pressure, not as many as most, or not as much as most, but some pressure still. The secondary is playing some good football. I mean, they just don't do anything poorly. And that's scary, and that's tough to game plan for. St. Louis, I still don't know how they lost that game against London. I mean, they could be 3-0 right now. They played the better game against the Knights. They forced more turnovers. They had the lead at halftime. They were at home. The Knights didn't have any running game to speak of. And somehow St. Louis just couldn't put the pieces together. So it's not like this is a 2-1 St. Louis team that has scraped by and their one loss was, by 30 in primetime or whatever. This team is, could arguably be 3-0, just like Carolina. And I give St. Louis a great shot to pull it out on the road against Carolina. I don't think they're that big of an underdog at all.
So essentially, it's just the same level. Ramos, do you agree with what old Cam here had to say, or?
What? Sorry. Yeah, I agree with most of it. What I liking about Carolina, and I think that Carolina will be able to pull off this one and go 4-0, is what basically Cam was saying. The fact that St. Louis was unable to close games, not close games. St. Louis, but just that one game against London. They had the lead at halftime, and they just couldn't make it happen. Whilst Carolina has been able to close the games that they were not able to close last season, and this is something that I said on the podcast of last week, the fact that Carolina has been able to close these games. Last season, they lost like 4 or 5 games where they had the match basically won, and at the end of it, they just allowed a big-time touchdown or a game-winning field goal, or they just couldn't close those games because otherwise Carolina could have been probably, if not a playoff team, a 500 team last season, and now they are able to go in the clutch and finish this game. So, they won against San Francisco by 3 points, scoring a game-winning field goal. They were able to pull off this one against London by one score as well. So I like how Carolina is playing under the pressure of we have to close this game, and that's why I'm liking Carolina to pull this one off and go 4-0. And this is a feel good story, as Cam was saying, because for me it's like a few seasons ago you saw a Carolina team that was really, really struggling last season. A few seasons back, they've not been in the playoffs other than one time in their franchise history. Whilst you have St. Louis, who's been also a team that has been kind of struggling and kind of going back and forth between a promise and playing some average football, to be honest, and kind of not finding their identity and trying something new. So it's very good to see and very refreshing to see these two squads playing really, really good football.
I do want to mention one stat before we go, Jack, about St. Louis that I found kind of stunning. When you look at our beautiful website, thank you, Liam and Scott, for keeping everything updated. You go back to the season 9 stats, right? Offensive stats. Okay, St. Louis was last in the league, averaging 16.8 points per game. That was a touchdown worse than the next worst team in that season. So St. Louis had, no offense to speak of. Then, last season, the Gladiators struggled again. They only had 19.83 points a game. That was 4th worst in the SFL. And now, through the first 3 weeks of the season, St. Louis's offense is averaging 25.67 points a game. That's 6th best in the SFL. That's just an awesome turnaround for St. Louis's offense.
Yeah, I don't think I disagree with you right there. And, St. Louis, here's my thing about them currently going through the rest of this season. They started out in a roughly similar position to this last season, where they were starting out pretty hot, but just midway through they absolutely burned out. And I'm not saying this isn't, St. Louis is going to lose, 7 of their next 8 or whatever. But, just kind of I'm keeping my eye on them. All right, I wouldn't be surprised if they go on like some insane winning run this next couple weeks. So with that, thanks for tuning into this SFL podcast presented by APM Music here on YouTube. I am your host, Jack Brown, saying so long from not only myself, but from Ramos Lynn and Cameron Irvine.